Miracle.
You have the power of choice.
Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ.
Happy Monday to you. Welcome to Life Today Live. I'm Randy Robinson. Good to have you here. We're going to kick off this week with a topic that is impacting a lot of people, especially in the COVID time. I think it heightened a lot of what was already there for people and may have created some new anxieties. I don't know how it couldn't create a level of anxiety in pretty much everyone, and we're still kind of living through it. And it's. I mean, frankly, we have a pandemic of fear, honestly, in the world still. I think, and some places worse than others. We're going to deal with that. Judy, nice to have you. Chat is open, by the way, if you're watching on a chat-enabled channel. If you're not, we're on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, no longer Periscope, and LightSource. So we welcome you on all of those channels. Be a part of the conversation. We're going to talk to a gentleman today who actually has a great resume, especially for people like me who are into media and things. John Seidl is the founder and president of Veritas Creative, which is a digital media company. He's one of the founders at The Blaze, Glenn Beck's organization. Worked with Kirk Cameron for many years. And so he's been kind of a behind-the-scenes guy in a lot of ways, but dealing with, some very visible media outlets and companies and really just helping a lot of people. At the same time, he's just like all of us, dealing with his own stuff. And so he finally put that into a book, and it is called Finding Rest. It looks just like this. It's available now wherever you get books. And he opens up. He talks about the hard things and the things he's faced and dealt with, and I'm guessing continues to deal with on pretty much a daily basis. That anyone I've talked to, they say that's it. So we're going to talk about that, and again, be a part of the conversation. Judy's watching on Facebook and YouTube, and if there's any issues over on Facebook, I'll check it out here in a second, but we're on the other channel, so you can always follow us wherever you're at. John, great to have you on Life Today Live. Appreciate you being with us.
Yeah, Randy, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for that introduction, and thank you for caring about this topic. I'm really excited that this has become not just something that lives in the darkness, right? But as we know, as Christians, the more you get things into the light, the more, the better that is. So I'm glad we're having this conversation. Okay,
so now that's an interesting point right there, because I'm guessing I'm a little older than you, but we won't get into that. But when I grew up, this is not something we talked about. And for those of us who don't deal with any kind of mental illness that I know of, my wife may disagree, but I've never really had the anxiety. I've never had panic attacks. I mean, certainly I've felt fear. I mean, I'm not inhuman or anything, but there's sort of this blissful ignorance in a lot of ways, which makes us not talk about it. And then when you have people that are dealing with it, I know Sheila Walsh, my co-host on the broadcast program, struggled with this her whole life. She's taught me so much about it. But there seems to be a little bit of a fear of talking about it. Mm-hmm. And then you get reactions from people like me who are like, I don't know what to say to that, and it doesn't help. What made you want to talk about this? Because I can imagine it's probably not always that easy.
Yeah, I think part of it has been just what you had said, right? That there is there's been a stigma attached to this that has kept this in the dark and in secret. And I do think that part of that has been driven by the fact that, as a faith community, we haven't known how to deal with it, or how we've dealt with it is to tell people just have more faith, just pray more. Maybe there's sin in your life that you need to get rid of. In fact, I had a reviewer of the book on Amazon this weekend write all of those things, right? Well, John must have all this other stuff in his life. And I'm thinking, yeah, I have a lot of crud in my life, Randy, just like everyone else does, right? I mean, that's why if sanctification wasn't a thing, we wouldn't need Jesus, right? If it was just this one-time thing. But so I think what made me want to write this, I mean, even if you just kind of go back, is I was working with I Am Second at the time, which I'm sure a lot of your audience knows. And we were my goal. I was hired to make it so that the writing really matched the quality of the films, and so everyone knows them for their films, but I was hired to really make writing a big thing at the company. And so I was getting people to talk about their struggles, their depression, or just any other thing, right? And it was kind of the Holy Spirit tapping me on the shoulder saying like, hey, John, there's something that you could really talk about and open up about that you haven't opened up about. And I said, no, anything but that, right? And finally I did. I just sat down one day and I wrote out, it's time to tell the world my secret. And my secret was that just about a couple years earlier, I've been diagnosed with anxiety and OCD. And the responses I got to that were overwhelmingly positive to thank you. I've been a Christian for a long time, and I've been told like, just get over it already, right? Or just pray, or just all this kind of stuff that wasn't actually helping people get in a better relationship with Jesus, right? It was driving them away, and it wasn't really helping them deal with it. So that's why I said, okay, it's time to really come out and give what I feel like is a really definitive answer and response to Christians who struggle with mental health.
Okay, so here's the one that always comes up, more so in some denominational circles than others, but that is, it's just spiritual. You're just, you're either you don't have enough faith, maybe, or you're under attack, maybe, or whatever. But they go straight to the spiritual. Where do you position that? I
say this: it's a spiritual battle, absolutely, but it's also a physical battle, right? It's not an either or; it's a both and. And so, so let me put that in pause and say, you said something like you're under attack. Well, guess what, Randy? We're all under attack constantly because guess what? We wouldn't need this thing called the armor of God if we weren't all under attack, right? We're constantly under attack. We have the armor of God for that reason. So back to the other point. I say this. I know there are spiritual things inside me that I need to address. There's pride. There's a desire to control everything, right? To want to be God, if you will. I mean, my anxiety is saying, oh, if I can just make this happen and this happen and this happen, then everything would be okay, right? There's some trust, right? Am I really trusting and fully relying on the Lord that He has me? Yes, I agree those are spiritual issues. But for me, there's also actually, synapses in my brain that are different. There's levels of serotonin that are different in my brain. And so I can never fully address those spiritual things until I address the physical, right? Yeah. And so for me, like there is medication I take, right? But that gets me to a point where that's not an excuse not to do the spiritual work. That's actually enables me to do the spiritual work so that I can root those things out.
Yeah, no, that's actually really good. Let me ask you, are those reading glasses you're wearing?
They are not.
They're not. Okay, so they're just seeing glasses. Like me, I mean, I have like lenses implanted, but people could tell me, look, you need to read the Word more, and if I can't focus, like I literally can't see it.
Great analogy. Great analogy.
What am I going to do?
I might steal that.
It's all yours. It's a gift. Because it was spurned by what you're saying. And if someone said, brother, you just need to read the Word more, and I'm going, yeah, I would love to be able to read the Word more. I literally can't tell the words on the page. So what do? I go to the eye doctor. I've had bukus of eye surgeries, more than you ever want to have. And you know what? This weekend, I'm reading the Gospel of Mark because a doctor helped me put me in a position where I could. And so I do. So I think if my understanding has evolved and I've learned anything about mental health issues is exactly what you're saying, that we need to you do what you need to do. And so in your experience, what you need to do, is it medication? Is it counseling? What is it?
Yeah, great question. And so one thing I make clear in the book, and I want to make clear to everyone, I'm not out here. I'm not a doctor prescribing medication for everyone that has had a panic attack, right? Yeah. What I am saying is that there are things that you can do. For some people, that's medication. For some people, I think a lot of people, that is counseling, right? I go to a Christian counselor, and there are seasons in my life where I'm going a lot more frequently, and there are seasons where I'm not, And so for me, it is, the Lord has given us common graces, right? Medication is one of those common graces, right? Just like you would take medication for high blood pressure, or you would take you take insulin for diabetes, right? It's a common grace that he's given to us. For me, my medication is one of those common graces. Counseling is one of those common graces. So my recommendation, what I tell people is, talk to people who are smarter than me and smarter than you, right? And so in chorus with a doctor or a counselor or a psychiatrist or a pastor, all of those things, try to figure out what is that best course of action. For some people, it is medication. For some people, it is counseling. For some people, it is the fact that, this morning, Randy, I started this new thing now that it's not 9,000 degrees here in Texas. I'm going on a walk every morning, right? I'm listening to a podcast or I'm listening to a book on tape. I guess that kind of dates me too, right? You don't call it a book on tape anymore. I'm listening to an audio book. And I'm just taking time to actually, by getting some exercise, by getting sunlight, those are physical things that allow me to then, attack, if you will, my mental health problem. So it's really kind of all of those things in chorus together. I think the problem is we live in a world where we want things to be either A or either B, right? And so where we get in trouble is saying this is all a spiritual problem or this is all a physical problem. Those people as well need to be talked to. It's both and. You treat both of them and attack both of them.
Yeah. And by the way, don't try any medication on your own. Don't do anything based on anything you hear. Go to your doctor, get the help, because your body's different than my body and John's body.
Absolutely.
And yeah. So just the caveat there. You're originally from New York City, is that right?
I'm originally from Wisconsin, but I spent 7 years in New York City.
Okay, so the Texas is just probably meltdown territory for you.
Yeah,
so.
it's. I'll tell you what though, people kind of when it gets cold here, I put that in scare quotes, right? They say you should love this. You're from Wisconsin. I said, listen, Bob, listen, Susan. There's a reason I'm not in Wisconsin anymore, right? Because the 9 months of hibernation that you have to go through to get 3 months of beautiful sun is not what and I still love Wisconsin. But actually, to even just the conversation we were having, what I realized is, people talk about the Pacific Northwest being gloomy and whatnot. Wisconsin is like that, except instead of the rain, you get the snow, Yeah. And so I physically found that, like, for my mental health, like, I probably can't really live in Wisconsin anymore. Still love it. Still go back for Packers games like we were talking about off the air. But even just finding certain things that trigger, it's like my mental health is better when I'm in this state. When I'm in Texas, like, and all you Texans say, yeah, a lot of stuff is better when you're down here.
Right. And interesting, a lot of Californians are finding their mental health is better when they're in Texas too. And it has nothing to do with the weather. Anyway,
so are their pocketbooks.
That's why. That's exactly why. Okay, this is the book we're talking about. It's called Finding Rest, A Survivor's Guide to Navigating the Valleys of Anxiety, Faith, and Life, which I love putting those three things together. The author is Jonathan M. Seidl. You can call him John. That's what his website is, johnseidl.com. So this is a topic, obviously, that has been thrust to the forefront with the pandemic. And this is, Sheila is talking about this openly, so I don't mind talking about what she's talking about. As a matter of fact, she talks about it in her new book quite a bit because she shifted gears in her writing because of largely COVID, because it seems like anybody who, if you're already suffering from anxiety and OCD, good God, the pandemic had to be just the perfect storm for triggering those things. Did you hit a point?
Yeah, there was, yes. So I had my own panic moment in the beginning of COVID. And so I'll tell you about that in a second. But you would not believe, Randy, the amount of people that I have heard from in light of this pandemic who have said, I've never struggled with anxiety. I talk about a few of them in my book. I've been counseling pastors. And when I say counseling, I don't pretend to be a counselor, right? But just pastors coming to me saying, I've never gone through this. What do I do? Or what, how do I attack this, right? Those amount of people has skyrocketed. And here's how I explain that to people. A few years ago, I was practicing for a motorcycle trip down to Big Bend National Park, which is this beautiful national park on the South Texas border. And I realized that you apparently have to train for these things by sitting on a motorcycle for as long as you can possibly stand it to get train your backside and everything just to do this. So I started doing this, and I got home one day, and I take off all my motorcycle equipment, and man, my back is like really sensitive. And so I say to my wife, like, can you look and see if she goes, oh, it looks like you got a heat rash. I said, oh, okay. I go through the day, and man, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And so finally we go to a friend's house. He says, hey, you look like you're in a lot of pain. And I said, yeah, I am. He said, lift up your shirt. Lifts up my shirt. He goes, oh, you have shingles. Oh. I said, I have shingles? Jeez. He goes, yeah, I've had it twice. And sure enough, I go to the walk-in clinic. They're like, you have shingles. And so if people don't realize, shingles is the chickenpox virus. If you've ever had chickenpox, it's inside of you. It goes dormant in your spine, and it comes out either when you're older, when your immune system starts breaking down, or in moments of great stress. Mm-hmm. And I started thinking about this the other day, and I'm like, well, that's what a lot of people with anxiety in the pandemic are realizing. Anxiety, everyone has anxiety because anxiety is just self-preservation. I mean, if someone pulls a gun on you in the parking lot, you get anxious, right? Mm-hmm. It's a fight or flight. It's self-preservation. But the pandemic, just like stress can unearth shingles, has unearthed this anxiety, and it's spreading, right? Yeah. And so that's what a lot of people are finding. And I think there's a lot of people saying, I never thought I was an anxiety type guy, and here I am. And so that's why, you talk about God's timing. I signed the contract for this book in January of 2020. And literally as I'm writing it, 2 months into it, everything shuts down, and I will say that is when I had my freak out moment too, because I call anxiety is the tyranny of the what if. In your mind, it's what if this, what if that, what if not this, what if not that, right? And so you start giving so much power to the what if. What if my wife doesn't like me? What if my boss is really mad at me in that email? What if I didn't do this? And, all these type of things. And so for me, during COVID, I was like, what if we stay in lockdown for a year? What if this is, we didn't know diddly squat about this thing in March, right? What if there will never be, a way to treat this, all the kind of things. And it was then that I had to literally go to the book I'm writing and see like, okay, step by step, here's some practical physical things you can do. Here's some of the spiritual things you can work on. So yeah, I was there, and I know a lot of other people are too. Yeah.
And people are still there. I mean, this is because it's a mess. And I think if you really kind of take a 30,000-foot view at it, that's life for pretty much most people in the existence of humanity. And being born into comfortable, safe America for most people, not for everybody, but for most of us here, I think we take it for granted so that when something like this does come along, it kind of rocks you. Okay, so here's a question because, there may be some people who are not Christians who are watching. Mm-hmm. How long have you been a Christian? I'm just curious, kind of for the setup.
I grew up in the Christian home, really made my faith my own in college. So, okay. I would say my whole life, but really grasp it in college.
Yeah. So, it's pretty rooted in you.
Absolutely.
Do you ever talk to anyone who is not a Christian? Because a lot of things you're saying would not make sense at all. They have zero reference point for what you're even talking about to deal with this. And frankly, I don't know where you go other than heavy medication, which has its own side effects and negative effects that what do you say to a non-Christian who's dealing with this?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I have had and continue to have some of those conversations with people I know. And what I approach it from is, at least from this perspective, let's just admit, just like in the 12 Steps program, which was created by Christians, right? Where they say, okay, we know that not everyone reading this is going to be a Christian, but can you accept at a base level a higher power? Can you accept that there is a spiritual component? Yeah. Okay. If you can at least accept that, right?
And a lot can't.
yeah, right. But what I have talked to those people, it is without fail that so many of them continue to feel like there's a missing piece, right? Because of what I talk about. I put the physical battle and the spiritual battle in back-to-back chapters for a reason, right? Because it's inevitable that there is that connection. And so what I have found in talking to those people is they feel like there's a missing connection. And so where I just continually point them is, listen, just like you can't just treat this with exercise, right? You just can't treat this with just one component. You have to treat it fully and wholly. And it actually gives me an opportunity to talk to them about the gospel a lot, to say, for lack of a better term, and I hate to use it because it's so churchy, but like there is a God-shaped hole in all of us, right? There's a God-shaped hole in your anxiety. There's a God-shaped hole that only he can fill and help you realize and understand. Because here's the thing, my continued struggle, you said earlier, that you continue to struggle. I do, right? Mm-hmm. The only way to make sense of that continued struggle is what I call a proper theology of suffering. And basically that is this, like that if I continue to struggle with something, just like Paul continued to struggle with the thorn in his flesh, that God is still at work and he's doing something with that, right? He's allowed it for a reason and he's working to refine me and redefine me, okay? And just like we see in the book of Job as well. And so none of my struggle would never make sense without any of that. I would never be able to continue on without any of that. And so it's given me that opportunity.
How has this openness and this struggle impacted your relationships, close relationships?
Well, I'll tell you what, my marriage was on the brink of collapse before I got help. And that's actually my origin story of this, of how I finally realized, okay, I need to get help is my wife and I were married 3 years. We had just moved from New York City to the Dallas area. And this is going to be a common refrain for people who have struggled. You've heard this term from your friends and loved ones is, she said, John, I'm always walking on eggshells. I don't know what's going to set you off, and not set me off like in a violent rampage, right? But with me, my anxiety also manifests itself in OCD, which OCD is basically a subset of anxiety. Is I don't know what's going to throw you into a destructive thought cycle where you're going to just retreat into yourself, or you're not going to be able to go out because you can't stop thinking about something. And there was one incident. There was we were supposed to go on a walk. Something went wrong. There was the wrong sweetener in my coffee, and I couldn't stop thinking about that. And that's going to sound silly, and it sounds silly to me. But for someone who has OCD, like little things like that just throw you off. And to see the woman in front of me just broken down, crying and saying, I can't, I'm here. I'm not going to leave you, right? I've made a marriage covenant with you, but I need to know if this is what I can expect for the rest of my life. Because if it is, you need to get help. And so that was the moment. So you talk about how it affected my relationships. It was affecting my relationships severely. And my wife finally coming to me and saying, this is how it's affecting me. Once she laid out kind of how her life is affected, not just my life, but her life is affected, it was kind of like this wake-up moment. And so in the book, there's an entire chapter just for friends and family of people who struggle. I wrote a chapter for you. I say in the beginning, this is not for the sufferer, although you should read it. This is for your loved one, your family member, your wife, your husband. And what I try to do is to show what's going on inside of us. And even just from a practical perspective, here are things to say, here are things not to say, here's how to approach us, here's how we need to approach you as well and give you grace.
Oh, that's helpful. And since you've addressed this, what has it done for you, for your relationships? Not just your marriage. Do you have kids? I
do have kids. I will tell you what I'm learning is how much of, there is, you kind of get into a habit in some of this stuff, right? Like the anxious thinking is what my thinking was for so much of my life, right? And so even my wife and I were just talking yesterday. Hey, John, sometimes things that maybe get you anxious, right? If you exude that anxiety, the kids pick up on that, And so it's being conscious of it. I say calling it by its name, calling it out and recognizing this is what's going on has helped me become a better father. And I think that is one thing too, just in the Christian community that we have shied away from. And yet, if you look in ancient Jewish culture, when you named something, you had power over it, right? What job did God give Adam in the garden? To name the animals, right? And in a sense, it's showing he has dominion over them, right? It's showing the hierarchy of creation, right? And so when I name my anxiety, when I call it out, when I call it by its name, I have then been given power and dominion over it. It doesn't mean it's all gone away, but it at least lets me know what I'm fighting.
That's good. That's good. All right. I got one more question for you, and it's about work and hope and the importance of those. But I want to show people the website real quick. This is johnseidl.com, Jonseidl. Good German name.
Yeah.
Ja, ganz gut. But there's a couple of things that if my understanding is correct, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that work should be a healthy thing in dealing with the anxiety, not as an escape, but almost therapeutic, but also just accomplishment. But a real key in dealing with this on an ongoing basis is the idea of hope. Whether it's planning something to look forward to, just having something to do away with the what ifs. Mm-hmm. Does that resonate with you at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the pieces of advice that I give people is, find hobbies, find things that you can do. One of the worst things that we mental health, anxiety, OCD sufferers can do is retreat inward, right? So I even talk about the difference between solitude and seclusion, mm-hmm. right? When you seclude yourself, that's not great. Solitude is a very biblical thing, right? Jesus spent time 40 days in solitude, right? And so what I have found also is that, like, us anxiety sufferers can sometimes be your best employees, right? Because we're getting things done not only just on time, we're getting them done ahead of time, right? Because we have a little bit of a fear of failure, right? Or, I have seen so many times, Randy, where God has redeemed this, in a good way, right? Where I have become a more attractive employee, a more attractive person that people want to hire to help them with, digital media strategy and things like that, right? Because I'm on top of things. So on one hand, I would say that is know that, like, in your work, this doesn't have to be a complete hindrance. It can actually be something that God redeems, and I've seen that in my life. And two, it is, yes, find hobbies, find work that allows you to not, just be so self-focused. I talk about how anxiety it's selfish because it's self-focused, right?
Yeah,
you're thinking about yourself, your feelings, what I'm going through. And one of the greatest things you can do when you find yourself in a destructive rut is this: serve others. I don't care if that's at church, if that's at soup kitchen, if that's at your child's PTA meeting, right? But when you are forcing yourself to get your vision off of yourself, it opens your eyes and it opens your mind.
That's good. Good, solid advice and experience you got here, John. I appreciate it. Is there anything else that you want to mention, that you want to say, that or promote, whatever, that I haven't gotten to? I just want to make sure I give you your due.
The only thing I will leave you with, and I kind of mentioned it at one point, is this: understand that we are going to continue to go through suffering in this world, right? Jesus promised that. He promised, in this world you will have suffering, right? And so, I pray that the Lord takes this away from me. So far, he has not, right? And so when you are going through suffering, when you have a loved one that passes away, when you have a thorn in your flesh that doesn't go away, understand that you cannot interpret God by your circumstances, but you have to interpret your circumstances by who you know God is.
Yeah, that's good.
And if you are faced with this trouble that continues to happen, it's not that God is bad, right? It's that we live in a fallen world, and he is faithful enough. He promises us he is faithful enough to use them for your good and his glory. And I explain both of those terms in depth in the book.
So good. So good. Thank you, man. I appreciate your openness, and you're very articulate, and that's very helpful. So thank you for that. Right, or what do I expect? Appreciate it, man.
Thank you, Randy. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you, all you guys out there watching. Be sure to hit share and come back. We've got so many good things. Check out the book. Check out the website. The website looks like this. It is jonseidl.com, and this is the book, Finding Rest. You can pick it up wherever you get books. We'll see you again next time here on Life Today Live.
It is the believing of the heart. It is faith